There is a young girl in Oregon. Her name is Juliana Snow. She is 5 years old, and she has to make, her family was recently faced with the decision of whether to send her to the hospital or just let her die at home the next time she gets sick. She has a neurodegenerative disease called Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease. It started with affecting her legs and arms, but it's moved to the muscles that control breathing. And so if she gets a cold, she could die. There's so many, she had to have a discussion with her mom about whether she was going to give up and die. And if that was, in fact, giving up or the more courageous thing to do. Just an excerpt from the conversation that her mother and Juliana had. Juliana, if you get sick again, do you want to go to the hospital again or stay home? Not the hospital. Even if that means that you will go to heaven if you stay at home? Yes, she said, I hate NT, the nasotracheal suction, where a tube gets placed down her nose into her lungs without sedation. I hate the hospital. The mom says, and it probably means that you'll go to heaven by yourself and mommy will join you later. Juliana said, will Alex, her 6-year-old brother, go to heaven with me? Probably not. Sometimes people go to heaven together at the same time, but most of the time they go alone. Does that scare you? Juliana says, no, heaven is good, but I don't like dying. Mom says, I know, I love you. Juliana says, madly. Mom says, yes, I love you madly. I'm so lucky. Juliana says, and I'm so lucky. Why? Because you love me madly. Heartbreaking. Now, this set off a big discussion over whether you can allow a young child who's 5 years old to make this kind of decision if she can really wrap her mind around it. Art Kaplan, a bioethicist, says, I think a 4-year-old might be capable of deciding what music to hear or what picture book they might want to read, but I think there's zero chance a 4-year-old can understand the concept of death. That doesn't develop until age 9 or 10, he continues to say. To say her experience, this is from the other side, is irrelevant doesn't make any sense. She knows more than anyone what it's like to be not a theoretical girl with a progressive neuromuscular disorder, but to be Juliana.
Perfectly legitimate points on both sides, and I'm torn about this story. On the one hand, don't tell your kid that there's a wonderful heaven where she's going to see grandma, and which is what they said, right? And she's going to be great, and she can walk again, and she can run again in heaven, right? And then ask her, hey, so you want to go to heaven or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but that's I have a 5-year-old. He was 4. He's not equipped to make that decision, right? So, but hold your judgment for a second, right? So, even if you believe in heaven, and none of this makes any sense. She says, no. I explained it to her, and she said again that she would rather stay at home and peacefully pass away and go to heaven rather than go to the hospital and deal with all that pain, because she understands that dying is not thinking anymore, not being anymore. No, right. but except you told her that she can think and she will exist. Yeah. And it'll be in a really, really lovely place, right? Now, she'll miss her parents and her brother, but at least grandma will be there and you'll show up eventually. So, no, none of that's not good enough. Okay, having said that, I don't disagree with their decision, right? So I disagree with asking the 4-year-old what their opinion is on whether they should die in the hospital or at home, but I'm not here to judge whether they go to the hospital or not, because you got to understand, the doctor, the nurse who's treated her over and over says it is enormously likely that she's going to die the next time she gets a cold. Even if she doesn't die, she's going to be on a respirator and not really functioning until the rest of her short life is lived out. Yeah. So this is not, and one of the ethicists who agrees with their decision says, look, this is not a close call in that, I mean, the decision is a close call, but medically, she's not going to survive. If she had, for example, treatable leukemia, we're not having this conversation. Right. She's getting the treatment. Nobody's asking her, right? This is a situation where she's not going to make it. So it's not like giving up. It's just a matter of where she passes away. And if they want her to pass away at home a little bit more comfortably, even though she might live a little less time, that's a perfectly fair decision. And I think I agree with that.
Yeah. I think that, so they're getting a lot of criticism, I guess. I never know what a lot of criticism online means. Because it can mean a little bit or it can mean a lot. And I think that they're getting it partially because we have a history in the United States of Christian Scientists and people like that who don't give their kids medicine when they could be fine, they could live, they just choose not to treat them. And so when you read headlines that are sensationalistic, like they let them choose heaven or hospital, without any context, that sounds like what they're doing. Now, they're not actually doing that. And I would argue, I think that conversation was a dramatization of what actually happened. I don't think that the kid chose. I think that they chose, and then they talked to the kid.
No, I slightly disagree with there. I think that they didn't want to make the choice because as a parent, it's too hard to make that choice. So they did this to feel a little bit better.
Maybe.
Oh,
That's
Maybe.
we're fulfilling the last wish of our child. That makes you feel better.
That's a possibility.
And I don't blame them for it because you're not in this situation.
Yeah.
I mean, I cried about 3 different times in this article.
it tears you apart.
Yeah, and so you don't know how it is to have a 4-year-old who's going to die. You
Mm-hmm.
don't know that, so don't judge him. Don't judge him. Right?
Yeah, I'm not judging them, but really fast. Why I'm not judging them is because, I mean, okay, fine. They had her made the decision, but again, only because the decision was going to be made tragically, horrifically, very soon, regardless of what they chose. She was going to die. If there was any real choice in terms of one thing could last 10 years and the other, like, then the kid wouldn't have the choice, and that's why I'm not going to judge them, because in the end, this is going to affect her for a little while and them for the rest of their lives emotionally. And that's what they're sort of preparing for, I think.
It's so messed up because, like, my dad had pancreatic cancer. It took it took years. And so when I remember being in toward those final days, and I now go back and try to figure out like where my head was at, and I can't. Like, I don't know how to really articulate what it was like in those moments. I know that I would have like these bargaining moments where it's like, this week's cool. We'll get to this week because it's like a significant date in the family. But if he goes this week, it's fine. Like, I was making all these weird bargains with what, I don't know. But
Yeah.
it's hard to hold parents. From my experience, it seems like it would be hard to hold these parents to this high a standard of being in like, well, they're taking this approach clinically. It's so hard after this kid's 5 years old and they've known for a long time she has this debilitating disease. Like, maybe they'll kick themselves after. But it sounds from this article like they're going through every possible step to make sure that they'll kick themselves the least after it's done.
And trying to help other people in this situation.
Yeah,
Because
and that's what she did.
tragically,
She
there are
started.
many 5-year-olds who are dying of terminal diseases right now in the U.S.
And she said, the mother said she couldn't find any places online where she could research this discourse. And so she started away. So I think that's good. I mean, this is a tough decision.
She's trying to share in that sense. Let me give you one last piece of context. Look, they can't sedate her because she's too weak. The disease weakens all of her muscles. That's why she can't walk anymore. Eventually, her lungs get so weak that she needs help breathing. And once she gets a cold, she's not going to be able to get the infection out of her lungs, right? Because the lungs are so weak. So last time that she got an infection, they had to go to the hospital and clean out her lungs. They were hoping to do it only every 2 hours, which is already excruciating, but wound up doing it more frequently. How do they do it? They stick a tube through your nose and your throat, which gives you a gag reflex for a little kid.
Yeah.
But she's too weak to scream, so you just see her crying and crying, right? And they can't give her painkillers because she wouldn't survive that.
Yeah.
So they have to do it without painkillers. Oh, I mean, it's heartbreaking, right? So the kid says, please don't put me through that. And again, if it was going to save her life, it's not a conversation. You put her through that anyway because you'll at least, you get to live and there'll be better days, etc.
Yeah.
But if that's how she's going to spend her last days, instead she wants to spend, maybe to be fair too, less days, but at home and at peace with her parents. You can disagree with them. That's perfectly fair. And I disagree with them that they should ask the kid, right? But don't judge them. That's a different thing, right?
Yeah.
Because you haven't been through it, and that's the toughest decision in the world. And every day they got to think about the moment they're going to lose her. So everybody, if you're online and you're one of the critics, lay off. You haven't been there.